everybody. Randy Patterson here, and this episode we're going down a little bit different track than we often do, and that is getting into at least the basis of this was some songs that go back to the early to mid 80s. You may remember a band called The Nerves or the Plimsouls. Well, Peter Case was integral to both of those bands, and then after the Plimsouls split up the first time, he went on to a solo career that has been very successful, but in very intimate venues. I'm sorry, but they are those songs have gone on to become fan favorites, and Peter often goes out just him and his guitar or another musician and just pleases audience all over the world. So he decided, at the urging of management and the label, to put out a live album called Peter Case at McCabe's My Life to Live. And it is a fun album because there is a lot of storytelling on there, as well as a lot of the music you've come to know and love. And I enjoyed listening to all of it. It's a lot of fun. It's probably one of the most fun albums I've listened to in a very long time. So I think you'll like it. Even if you're not even familiar with Peter, I encourage you to listen to this album and buy it. Please buy the record, because this is the only way people can make a living in this business. So while you're listening to this interview, please hit like and subscribe and share it with your music-loving friends. I think they'll like this interview. So without any further ado, here is my first of what I hope are many more interviews to come with Peter Case. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care. Hello, Peter.
Hey, how you doing, Randy?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Not bad.
Good deal. Where are you clicking in from?
San Francisco, where are you?
I'm in some little British band said the Smoky Mountains way down south, so that's where I'm at. I'm a mile and a half up the road from Dollywood.
All right, that's cool.
So, yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, I want to get to your live LP first, but and then after that, maybe if you have time, maybe touch a little bit on some of your career. What kind of time do you have? And I want to be respectful of it.
What kind of time do you need to do some?
Well, we depends on how big of talkers we are. I usually go for about 30 minutes, but
Okay,
I don't. But I've allotted an hour in case there's more you want to talk about, that type of thing.
All right.
But
Yeah, 30 minutes would be good, but like maybe we'll go over a little bit.
Okay,
I don't
sounds
have
good.
anything. At Yeah, I got some things coming up, but I can slide in on them.
Okay, super, super. Well, hey, I love this album.
Okay.
I love the stories as much as I do the songs, man.
Okay.
It was great. What made you decide to do McCabe's Guitar Shop and decide on that as being the right place to do this album at?
Well, Len Fico from the record label, he has a Sunset Boulevard Records, and I did Dr. Moan with them, and I've known Len for quite a while. He put out a record I did with the Plimsouls in the '90s, and I've known him for a long time. He's sort of a fixture from the Los Angeles when I was down there, but he was on that scene a lot, and he called up. We talked on the phone one day, and he said, "I want a live album, and I want to do a two-record set and I want all the songs. I want a live album, and I want this talking in between." And like nobody had ever said anything like that to me before, but he'd been to a number of my shows, so I said, "Okay, and let's do it." And the obvious choice was McCabe's because it's my home club. It's right down there in Los Angeles, and it was the start of my solo career, really. It was my first solo gig. I was still in the Plimsouls. It was '84, and
Mhm.
I played a couple of shows there, and that was the start of the whole thing. And so they say I've played McCabe's more than any other artist. It's a very great location for me. I like what it stands for, which is roots music and like really great musicians in an intimate situation. And like I say on the record, I talk about McCabe's and I talk about the people I've seen there. There's an incredible, um, list of people that have played there that, if you've been going to McCabe's, you see all sorts of people. And so the concerts there are usually great. It's usually inspiring to the people that play there. The audiences are great. They're very enthusiastic. So it was, I don't even know if we even considered any other place.
What's the capacity there, audience
It's
wise?
not big. I've never really grown beyond, it was like two sold out shows. It was like 150, 175,
Mm-hmm.
they used to cram 200. Maybe there was that many people in there, but that would be the most. Strangely enough, my career never really went past that point. I play clubs that size everywhere and pretty much sell them out, but I've never gone like to big rooms, but rarely, the other day I played like a place that held 400 people up in Boston,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a sold out show. But I like playing clubs that size. I like being able to see and feel what's going on with the room. That's one of the reasons I think why I went to the solo acoustic kind of thing after the Plimsouls was because I really like the communication of it. I'd seen a lot of great gigs like that over my life, of people playing that kind of music, and my computer's doing something crazy. But yeah, so the capacity's, like what I just said, like 175,
Yeah.
something like
It sounds like a great little venue we have in Knoxville over about an hour from me, hour west of me. It's called the Open Chord. It's actually a
that.
converted steakhouse, and a lot of people have played there. And to me, to your point, I love that intimacy that you can feel in a place like that. But that can only you can only create that atmosphere structurally to a certain point, and then the rest of it's up to the artist and the crowd, I think, and I guess the sound man, the
Absolutely.
unspoken hero, But that was, and I'm finding people our age are increasingly leaning towards those kind of shows more than the big productions. I mean, sure, we still like going to the bigger theaters and such, but I have a lot of friends that they just prefer the smaller crowds, the smaller, type of venue for a lot of reasons. What are you hearing from your fans on that? What's the big draw to your shows besides just you and your catalog? Are you getting that kind of feedback? Is people leaning more in that direction?
I don't hear too much generally about it. I hear about my show and some people say that they like that kind of thing. I do see a trend in that direction, but with people, maybe they sort of want more from music than just a sound and lights. And
Yeah.
so there's a real contact and a real meaning in these kind of shows. But in my show, it runs a whole gamut of emotions and it's a whole thing. And I think people come because they know that, it's like the old, review, I laughed, I cried, the sweep, the scope, trying to do everything,
Yep.
take people on a whole musical trip. And that's what this new record does. And that's what I try to do. And it's all done just with a guitar, basically. There's a few musicians on the record that I play with, but basically the whole thing is done. Um, it's a sleight of hand because you're just playing guitar and singing, but the songs that are written in such a way that hopefully they take people out on a ride. I have heard a lot when I was growing up. I liked rock and roll bands. Like I loved the Beatles and the Stones and the Standells and Led Zeppelin. I saw their first tour and a lot of different things. But But some of the things that impressed me the most were solo players. And by that, I mean like Lightning Hopkins, I saw when I was 16 or 17.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, over in Boston. And uh, I saw Dave Van Ronk very early on as a teenager. I saw people you probably haven't heard of up in Canada. Cedric Smith, he's a Canadian folk singer. He was probably the first one I ever saw. I saw Simon and Garfunkel do a two-man show uh, without a band, and Arlo Guthrie, of course, and John Hammond Jr. and a lot of these people. Laura Nero did a show like that, and it was
Really?
fantastic. And
Wow.
so, so and they would play there. A lot of these were in big places, pretty big. And it was very convincing and very powerful. So that was the direction I kind of went in. Like I like I like songs that have it all right in the song and all right in the simple accompaniment, and that's what we're trying to put across, And you can hear the whole thing in there, It's not like unplugged you know where it's usually a rock arrangement, but then it's unplugged. This is it. This is the thing. It's not unplugged. It just is what it is.
Right.
We used to have a joke, unplugged, yeah, and they let all the air out too. But
That's a good one.
yeah, but
Well, you know, live albums can sometimes feel kind of overly polished too, but this one feels very real, very human. Immediate comes to mind. Was that something you were consciously wanting to try to preserve, or was that something that just kind of happened by virtue of the venue and how you recorded it?
it's kind of the way I play, I think. We used to have a joke in the Plimsouls where guys would go, if we keep rehearsing like this, we're going to get too slick. And I'd say, don't worry about it. This band's not going to get too slick, and we never did, and like I'm just not a slick type musician, I am always trying to be out on the front edge or whatever it is. And so that's what you're hearing there is the front edge of the communication, the front edge of the songwriting, the moment, alive in the moment. And so it's none of it is really overly scripted,
Mm-hmm.
including
Have
the
you?
talk, which was pretty spontaneous. And people wanted me to go back to these stories that I'd told before, but I wouldn't do it. And so I didn't want to have that on the record. I wanted to just have some, like, break open some new, have a conversation with the audience. And
Mm-hmm,
so
mm-hmm.
that's sort of what it is.
Did for those who have heard it, what kind of feedback are you getting for that aspect of the album, the storytelling and the give and take of the audience?
A couple of the tracks of the storytelling are becoming ones that people are sending to each other. So the one called "Send a Guy Down," people are posting it, and I didn't have planned for this at all because that wasn't even something I've ever said at a gig before. That "Send a Guy Down" thing, but it's been pulled out of there, and one guy was saying this is better than 1,000 hours of therapy. Uh, Send a Guy Down. So the Send a Guy Down track is turning into sort of a sleeper hit from the record.
I'll be darned. Yeah, talk about that. It reminds me of an old Elvis album. Of course, anything Elvis did is now old, I suppose. But he had a whole album of just him talking on the from the stage, and people gobbled it up. So
He did?
yeah,
What's that
yeah.
record called?
It's
I want that.
it's out there. I can't read. I think it was called something like Elvis Talks or something like that. I hope it's still available. But
I gotta
seriously,
get a copy of that one, man. That sounds really great.
I've got it. I can route you the if I find it, I'll send you the link or route it.
Okay,
Route it
great. Yeah, I
through
would love.
people.
I'm a big Elvis fan. I don't know about that one though. That would be great.
He was my first concert ever.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Where was that
19.
at?
Grew up in Phoenix, and I was born here, but grew up in Phoenix. And it was on Easter Sunday,
Wow.
1973, not long after the Aloha concert.
Right.
And I was 13 years old, thereabouts 13, 14 years old. And got there 2 hours. The fact that I could even go was a miracle
Sure. Yeah,
because
totally.
my mom had me in church every time the doors were
Easter, yeah.
open, and she was an Elvis fan, so I had that going for
Wow.
me. And so I got there 2 hours early to shorten the story up, and I'm standing at the stage looking at it before hardly anybody's there, and I'm looking at the cool black guitar with the script on the neck and all that,
Yeah.
and I noticed somebody kind of walking up to the side of me. I turned around and looked. I said, "Are you Colonel Parker?"
Oh my
He
God.
doesn't even look at me. He just nods his head. And so I
Well,
asked a couple questions like, where would
oh,
he play before? Where's he going after? And I have the whole handwritten report. I did it as a school report. on my
Wow.
website, boomerocity.com. But
That's
anyway,
pretty cool, man.
the last question I asked him is, "Can I go backstage to meet him?" He goes, "No," and he turns around and walks off.
That keeps
So
it simple. How was the music? Was it great?
it was great. It was
Yeah,
absolutely
Elvis was
great,
great.
and he introduced a song that he said was coming out on an album called "I'm Leaving." And I looked for that album for
Oh,
years after
wow.
that concert. And then, you know, years later, I'm a so called adult living in my second house that I bought. And I signed up for the Columbia Records thing. And there
Yeah.
was a box set, just dirt cheap through them, of Elvis's stuff, Walk a Mile in My Shoes.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I bought it and I got it and I noticed that song was on there. I hadn't
Wow.
heard it since 1973, and this was like in the mid 90s. Pop it in. I said, I got to see if I remembered as I heard it that one time.
Wow.
Exactly. It just burned itself into my mind that strongly. And so anyway, that's my
That's a
Elvis
good point.
story.
Like what you're saying there is like kind of what you're trying to do as a singer or an artist is like make things that surpass time and
Mm-hmm.
live in people's minds and memories that they can take with them. And that's what I'm trying to do at my shows. I have shows like that too that I saw when I was a kid. Like I saw Paul Butterfield playing 67. It was in a bar. I was with my dad, and
Cool.
it was like very, I remember the whole thing. It was just so electrifying. Um, and so things like that they live when it's really done right, and the musicians like are really great. It lives in your mind and your heart for forever. And
Yeah.
I think that's a great thing.
Do you find, I mean, I'm getting off track from my questions here, but I love the track we're on. What is, first of all, people say you never want to meet your heroes because you know, your illusions are destroyed, this, that, and the other. I've done over 700 interviews. Some of them I've interviewed the same person. I think Steve Lukather is my current record holder of 7 interviews with him. I haven't had a real bad experience with anybody. There's been a couple who've been a little, put offish, things like that, whether I interviewed them or whether I've met them backstage. But number one, a two-part question on this: have you met any of your heroes? It sounds like you've seen them in concert, up close and personal. But have you met any of them? And what was that experience like for you? And then secondly, how did that affect how you deal with your fans and interact with them?
Well, the way I deal with my fans and interact with them doesn't have much to do with my heroes. And so it has to do with just how I feel about other people and about how people are supposed to treat each other. So I try to listen to people and pay attention, and I don't just see them as, there's a Spanish poet, has this line, Antonio Machado. He says, "An eye is not an eye because you see it. An eye is an eye because it sees you." And people see you, and they're conscious, and you can't just treat them as like, some sort of means to an end. And so when people
Right.
come back and they want to meet people, I guess, I don't tend to go back and meet people at shows very often. So, I think my friend says we tried to meet Laura Nero after the show in Buffalo and said that we did, but I don't really recall it. I've met Bruce Springsteen. Now, he was not, I don't know if he's definitely a hero of mine, but I definitely respect him and look up to him. And he was really a nice person. I found him to be really just like a regular person. John Prine,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I worked with and we met, and he was just one of the most beautiful people that was very, just respectful and like nice to other people that he met, and he never just fired away at people, or
Mm-hmm.
did anything weird. So I those are the people I've met. Tom Petty was always very. He was and once again, it wasn't a hero. I'm trying to think who my heroes were that I would have met. I met Bob Dylan at a party, but I mean, I couldn't, it's very difficult to say anything. I said, I love what you, thank you, or something. I mean, what are you
Yeah,
going to
he's
do?
never heard that before, has he?
No, you can't really, there's nothing much you can really say. And
Yeah.
so, but it was nice to meet him. He was nice too, you know. So
Hmm.
I don't really know how to answer that question except to say that like just the way I feel about people comes first, you know. And I do meet people every once in a while. Like there'll be people that come back that like are really kind of the people themselves are like really kind of treating you in a as if you're some sort of as if you're not really there, like you're just there for like you know they seem like they're not aware that you're cognizant, you know. So you
Hmm.
know when that happens, I tend to shy away a little bit, but most people aren't like that. They're really nice and they want to meet you and talk about things. And sometimes people have questions and you try to talk to them as much as you can because you're busy and stuff, but you're trying to you know you're on tour and stuff. But I talk to people after every show and
Hmm.
hang out and stuff.
It's interesting to see how that interaction was. I watched John Mayall after before and after one of his shows here, and I'd interviewed him the month before that show. And um, one on one to talk to, great. If he saw that you were there were people trying to take pictures and such, he would just literally turn his head so you couldn't get a
Yeah,
picture.
people, you get tired of seeing bad pictures. And so,
True,
you
true.
know,
I could
like,
get
you
that.
know, and as you get older, you know, like a guy like Mail or like me or somebody, you're probably like, oh God, I don't know, please. So, you know, I don't want too many pictures. And then there's like, with a guy like Mail, he's pretty famous. So there's probably paparazzi maybe or something.
Yeah.
Must be difficult. But, you know, I'll take pictures with people if they want, you know, if they want to do a selfie or something, I'll stand out there and do that. If, you know, if they just
Sure.
want to do a solo shot of me, I've had that go kind of weird. I've had people take like you know, really strange looking photographs and then posting them on, you know, Wikipedia and all this stuff.
Oh
So,
Lord.
you know, you know, like I don't want to see that for the rest of my life when everybody pulls up a Wikipedia page, you know. So, you know, I like to talk to people. I like people, and you know, I was taught to be polite to people too, you know. But I am interested in people and what they get from it, and I learn a lot from the people that come to the shows and what they say, because sometimes they say and see things. I can't think of anything right now, but the people will say things and see things that you hadn't really considered.
No, that's a good point. Do you feel that audiences listen differently today than they did, say, in the beginning of your career?
It's an interesting question. You know, maybe now that I've been doing this for a while, the shock of having me switch from the electric thing to the acoustic thing wore off quite a ways back. Uh, and so there might be a deeper kind of listening, like people have heard my albums and lived with what I do more. And but it's hard to say really. Uh, the rooms are generally quiet when I play, like the people really tune in and I feel like they're really
Hmm.
following me. But I felt like that in when I first played McCabe's, I definitely felt like the audience was really with me. But a lot of times when I used to go out in the country back in the 80s and stuff, in the 90s, people didn't really get as much. It took a while for people to get what I was trying to do. And so, you know, they'd listen, but they'd also like, you know, get rattled by the whole thing or like walk
Hmm.
around or make a lot of noise and all
Talk a
kinds of
lot.
stuff, none of which happens much anymore. So
Hmm.
yeah, they're more tuned in now. Audiences seem like they're more educated. The audience has been educated not just by me, but by the whole, you know, uh, press and by the shows they've seen and, you know, everything. So it's a different atmosphere. When I first came out, there was nobody really out there doing what I was doing, which was playing solo acoustic. There were very few people that were doing it as a full-time thing. I can't really think even who they were. Yeah.
But it's and now that I think some of us are so jaded, especially fans, listeners, casual listeners. We can get to a point to where we assume what we see is not exactly what's really going on. Someone else, we've heard about the Wrecking Crew and all that. Who all they were playing for, and that was the real sound. But then to go into a real live concert that's small enough where you can tell, auto tune and all that kind of stuff's not being used. Um, I think that wakes people up when they see actual talent in play as opposed to being in a big arena and knowing something's just not quite as real as they're trying to put it out there. But I know for me as a fan, I've gone to several shows of people, and I went in not really a fan, I'll one of them. I've told Luke this. When I first saw Toto in concert, I mean, I appreciated who they were, but I didn't know any of their albums. When I came out of the concert, gosh, the musicianship became much more real and alive to me. And oddly enough, when I would hear the songs on the radio or listen to a CD of theirs, I heard it differently after seeing them live
Okay.
than I originally heard it. And I don't know what causes that, but I would imagine you have a lot of fans that may not be able to articulate it the way I just did. Maybe they articulate it different, but I mean, something about that live experience that changes your perspective of an artist, of a song. And to that point, has there been a song, especially on this album, that as you went the acoustic unplugged route, that over the years has hit you differently, let's say today, than it did when you first wrote the song?
Mm. Well, there's a lot of things you just asked, but
I'm sorry.
let me think. Yeah, the songs come they develop sometimes after you write them for quite a while. Like there's a song on the new album called "Somebody Told the Truth,"
Mm-hmm.
and when I first did that song, I just made it up in the studio one day and then knocked it out with some guys, and it was on an album. I think it was on the album called Wig, and it wasn't done at the Wig sessions. It was done at a separate thing, and then just got added to the album. I think it's on that album, and I thought it was good and everything, and I really liked the record, but it didn't really attract much attention at that time. It was
Mm-hmm.
on side two, like cut three or something like that, or buried in the last third of the CD and everything. And but I liked the song a lot, and I liked what it was saying. But I didn't really play it either. And then somewhere, trying to have somehow one night on the road, like that, when I go on the road, like things happen. And so one night. I started playing the song and I got the audience to clap along with the beat like it was on the record. And that
Mm-hmm.
happened. And then somehow I got the audience singing along on the song, like because it was kind of complicated and I made it kind of, it was kind of funny trying to get the people to sing this complicated part. And so we got into that. And I did all that. And then Chuck Prophet, is a friend of mine. He came up to me, I think it was on this particular night, and he goes, that's a closer, man. That's a hard kind of song to write. You've written a song like that's a song you could close your shows with, like it's a closer. Which I know not a term I've ever used before, but it all of a sudden had leapt into this new area, and then by the time I was still playing it with musicians and stuff and with myself, and then by the time I got to McCabe's for the record, I don't even play on it. I think there's a guitar player playing, but I play harmonica, and it's just sort of a call and answer thing. And
Right.
I think it's the best version of it. It's the one that's on the album. Somebody told the truth, and people really get into it, and it's a good song for these times since the truth has been so flayed about these days, and so it's a song that really grew.
Which
So
song? Oh, I'm
it
sorry. Go
was
ahead.
surprising to me, that it took off the way it did, and there was a politician actually that I won't say who it was, but he was trying to do fundraisers, and he wanted me to come out and sing it before he gave his speech, and all this stuff. There's a whole life to the song that I was really surprised by. That's one. Things do transform. Ain't Gonna Worry No More, which is on the album, also is the actual closer in the record, or one of
Mm-hmm.
the actual ones. And that's another one that was just like a little, like it was just lines written on a piece of paper. And I went in to record with a producer named Ian Brennan. And Ian Brennan was the producer because he was actually like an anger management counselor. Um, and he taught anger management to people in triage at hospitals. And so he went around the country. That's what he did for a living. And then he produced, he produced Ramblin' Jack Elliott. And I figured he could produce me since he was an anger management counselor and could do triage at hospitals. He's got to be able to come through with a record pretty good. He was Mike Tyson's anger management counselor. And,
Wow.
and so we said, well, that's pretty cool. I can work with him. But anyhow, so we made a whole record of me. It's me just playing solo acoustic, and the record's called it's on Yep Rock, and it's called Let Us Not Praise Sleepy John. It ended up getting nominated for a Grammy, and he was a great guy to work with, but he was convinced. I'd never even played this song, but I just fooled around with it just a little bit, like a few of the lines with an acoustic guitar, and he goes, "That's the one right there. You gotta like, I want you to finish. You gotta finish that song." And the first time I ever played it is the version that's on the record, on the record, Sleepy John record, and I'd never played it before, and so I just did this like little guitar thing, like I made this kind of guitar figure that I've been fooling around with, and then sang the song to it. We were at Village Recorders over in Los Angeles, nice studio, and he'd set it up for an acoustic set, and I did that over there. And it's another song that came alive at the shows, and I started to feel that the audience really related to that. And as times go along now, it's probably like one of the most powerful moments in the show, is when you get into I ain't gonna worry no more, and this whole thing that we do with that, which kind of flips it around on its head and then back again. And so that's another one that really grew.
Cool. Is there I used to ask this as a what song would you point to as a calling card for the album, but then Chris from the DBs he said, "Oh, you mean like a gateway drug?" I said, "Yeah. What 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 song on this album, whether it's old long time fans or maybe somebody these younger kids digging into Americana now, which one would you point to as the gateway drug to this particular album?"
I think it's every 24 hours.
Huh.
That's I think that's the one a lot of times I open up shows with, but it's a really nice version of it. When I originally recorded it, it was with me and Richard Thompson, but
Mm-hmm.
on this one it's just me, but it works that way, and it's it's fast, but it's got like a something to say, and it's got a lot of imagery, and it's about being on the road, but it's not cloying or anything like that. It's a very kind of it's pretty energetic and kind of a melodic in an interesting way, and there's guitar playing on it and all sorts of stuff. So I think that's definitely the I think they put it out as a single at one point. I can't remember.
I think so. What what was or was there? I mean, you've done these shows for quite a while now. Was there a surprise at all in putting this record together?
Yeah, I mean the whole thing was a surprise that even Len wanted to even do it, in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, really, the talking, and then I'd never put together a tape of a record of all the between song raps before. It had never even occurred to me. I guess it was sort of like putting we took two shows and put them both together. Yeah, I mean the whole thing was kind of a surprise that that we worked with it, and you had to edit it and then figure out what mics to use, and you can hear the audience. I
Mm-hmm.
had, it made me hear the audience in a different way, and it was really interesting for me to do. But it's always a surprise, really. I was surprised at the way Oldest Story in the World and A Million Miles Away, which are Plimsouls standards, the way they came through in this kind of lineup. The guy Henry Cash, who played guitar on that. Um, he played bass on it actually, but he's a guitarist with a band called Starcrawler. And Starcrawler is like a really popular rock band, They're young. I've known this guy ever since he was like a baby because I knew his dad who plays on the record too, Buddy Zapata, and like his dad and me would sit around play guitars, and him and Henry and his brother Bill, who are both on the album, they were like little children like playing on the rug with toys, dinosaur
Mm-hmm.
toys or something, back when I met him. And now he's like they're in this popular band, and they also have an Americana band called Cash and Sky with Sophie Sky singing. And so Cash and Sky come in and play, and Bill's idea was play A Million Miles Away on the piano and play Oldest Story in the World on the piano, and it'll be like it'll put it in a different. And I thought that was a brilliant idea, so we did that, and it created a whole different vibe with the pedal steel, and the song lives
Mm.
in a different way. So that was a surprise because. I always liked A Million Miles Away because it was a popular song, but I never felt like it was my best song. But like on this record, it lives in a different kind of way, and like it comes across with the rest of my material, like stands right up in there with it. So
Hmm.
it's pretty. It was a nice moment for me to play both those songs and to get those on the record.
Why do you think Americana's? I mean, people call it Americana. You and I are from the same generation. I think of it country rock, folk rock, a lot of interchangeable genre names to kind of, and then now they call it Americana, which I think is a little bit bigger umbrella to encompass everybody, or a lot of people. Why? What do you think the appeal of that is to the younger generations that's coming up behind us?
I don't know, in a lot of ways, like I was the first person from that sort of like new wave punk rock generation, which the Nerves and the Plimsouls and all that. By the way, the Nerves have an album coming out in October on Third Man Records. It's called 50th Anniversary, and
Oh,
it's 29 tracks from the Nerves period. And but it occurred to me because those were my roots. Like when I wanted to play called Americana, it wasn't called that when I started doing it. In fact, the term Americana was created by that guy. He was working. I'm trying to remember. He was a friend of mine, and I can't remember his. I got to send a guy down. I can't quite remember his name, but I got to. He was a great guy. I was with him one night when he locked his keys in his car while the car was running. What's that guy down in Nashville? What was that guy's name? He's a great guy, and we thought the car was going to blow up, but um. It was a term he invented to include a lot of people that had not been included on their own chart because it was sort of rebellious to the rock and roll radio thing.
right,
Those terms are all kind of like the best music. A lot of times you can hardly even categorize it.
right. I agree.
Like we could never, like the Nerves weren't a power pop group really, and neither were the Plimsouls, but they weren't like hard rock or glam rock or they weren't any of those kind of things. There was a rock. I just always called it rock and roll,
Mm-hmm.
and same with the Nerves. But like you can, I'm not really a folk singer, though. I go out and I play solo, and sometimes people are like folk singing. I mean, a lot of people say that kind of thing about these kind of gigs. But really, it's not like what I do, and it's not blues. You
Right.
could say I'm a songster. That would be like using an old term that was used for Mississippi John Hurt and
Mm-hmm.
Leadbelly, where you purvey songs, but with a lot of intensity, and maybe that's what it is. But it's great that there's a big umbrella like Americana where people can come to it. What the appeal of it is like that it's got the roots of music in it in a deeper way. So all roads lead back to those roots. And so, even if you're like if you're into Deep Purple Highway Star or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
eventually, if you really think about it, you'll end up going back to Chuck Berry, and then you'll go, Chuck Berry was really into T-Bone Walker, and then T-Bone Walker was like one of like, the three great Texas guitar players, Frankie
Mm-hmm.
Lee Sims and Lightning Hopkins and T-Bone Walker. And you got those guys. Lightning Hopkins was following around Texas Alexander and Lightning and Blind Lemon Jefferson, and I don't know what Blind Lemon Jefferson was doing, who he was following around. He was or where how he got where he got. But you see, so there's a lot of soul that comes up through it, Like in literature, people like Homer and they like Shakespeare and they like things that, have like those kind of roots to it. Like in the music, we go back to the roots of things because there's a lot of great humor in there and there's a lot of great soulfulness in there and a lot of things you can realize. New music is great too. I mean, I love, uh, I just like to hear, new things too, whatever they are. And I'm not just like, it's got to be old. I like hearing, you know, I like computer music. I like music made on synthesizers. In fact, we did a record where recently where we made a meld between electronic music and um, Americana, and it's called Midnight Broadcast, and we use Moogs on it or Moogs or whatever you call them, and then
Mm-hmm.
so there's like like kind of like these really Brian Eno-esque kind of, what do you call it? Uh,
Kind of a techno, yeah.
It's yeah, kind
Interestingly,
of like it's what they call it's called what I forget the name for it, but it's like like you just sit back and let it wash over you, and it's like these sound collages, and
yeah.
they're very great. I did it with this guy named Ron Franklin, who's a kind of a blues musician out of Memphis, but he also does this stuff, and so all these things come together. There's no for musicians that musicians like really often trying to break down boundaries, and I mean, Chuck Berry broke down the boundary between blues and jazz and teenage
Hmm.
music and created that kind of rock and roll. I mean, everybody's doing something like that, and so that's what makes it fresh. And so, um, I forget Americana, why are people getting into it? Well, I guess it's because it also has communication in a way, with words.
Hmm.
Words are really important, but we forget about it. And like, I did notice that as soon as I went solo, after the Plimsouls that all of a sudden you're in a lot more in contact with the audience, like with the language.
Hmm.
Like language is important in rock and roll, but rock and roll is kind of like um, they're kind of like Western Union, like you pay by the word, and then you can, a million miles away, stop. Uh, you know, uh, Friday night I just got back, stop. It's like very simple, chorus, a million miles away, a million miles away, a million miles away, right?
Repeat.
Yeah, repeat, rinse and repeat. But but with the these other kind of songs, some of them are simple, like even Two Angels is pretty simple, but the words take on a level. I've had people tell me like with this new version of A Million Miles Away that it's the first time they've really noticed the lyrics. That it
Hmm.
because they listened to rock and roll as like just a soundscape, and now, they're hearing it. So I think there's an element of that. Like people like stories and they like to be moved moved besides just the big ecstatic sound thing that happens at a live show. People also like to be moved by drama, and they like to be
Hmm.
moved by expression of words, so that's what I think. For a long time there, hippies were going like, oh, words, man, I'm sick of words, but words are what we have to communicate with each other. It's one of the
That's
best
right.
means we have to communicate, and they're important in the songs. The song, like when you write the song lyric, it's like music and lyrics by Bob Dylan or Lennon and McCartney. Music and lyrics. It's music and
It's the
so
whole package.
song
Yeah.
is music and lyrics, and so like the lyrics really come across on the Americana thing, and it's got those roots from blues and country music, our history as a country, and in the world too, so I think that I guess that's the it seems kind of deeper in a way. uh
I agree.
I mean, I mean, Taylor Swift started out as Americana and then went into like super pop music, and she's a
Hmm.
good writer and everything. I heard a thing by her that I thought was really good recently. Musically, I didn't like her lyrics as much, but I didn't hate them. I was like somewhere and I put a Shazam on it. Thing, wow, that's a cool track, and it was Taylor Swift, and it was a really beautiful choral kind of piece, and it was great. But so she's taking Americana and like taking it to like this weird other place that she's taking it, and
Big bucks.
it's huge,
Well,
Yeah.
the music, for me as a fan, I'm not a musician, but sound creates a mood, as do words. And when I first launched Boomerocity, um, I used it to showcase some of my introspective or reflective writing. Interviews was kind of an afterthought when I set it up. And then by the end of the first year, I had 25 interviews. I thought, well, I need to rethink
Oh,
this. But a lot of times, my stories, I title them the name of the song, and then kind of as a subtitle would be a line out of the song. And then I would tell my story that line kind of was foundational to, not inspired the story, but the line from the song would support the story. The story was already pre-existing. Now you would pull this line to say, "Hey, you like the song? That was the hook, but here's my story where that phrase means something to me or helps illustrate the story that I'm sharing."
right. It's
and
interesting.
it was a lot of fun. I don't know how
Uh,
much people read it in the beginning, 17 years ago, but it was a lot of fun to do that. Very therapeutic, very cathartic, but it's a heck of a lot of fun to do that even still. But people don't read much anymore, and the
yeah,
attention span is so short anymore too. I'm
yeah.
surprised songs even sell, but but well,
Well, the
what
whole
do you?
business is
Oh, go ahead.
strange now. It's hard to say, like, even what goes on in the record business, like how anything sells, or it's on Spotify. Like, how do you sell anything in a world where like all your stuff goes up on Spotify and YouTube? Like, how are you supposed to sell records? It's kind of it's
I agree.
defies imagination. Like really, people are like, what happened to the record business? Like, free records, free because you can just go on the line now and people can just want to know what he's up to, and they look at it, oh yeah, McCartney's new thing or something. You just like scan through it real quick. Okay, now I know what he's doing, and like the thing has lost its depth, and
I
people,
agree.
when we came into it, like you'd get a record, go down to the record store and hang out and listen to records while they played them in the record store, maybe, and then buy one and take it home and live
Hmm.
with it.
It was an event.
Yeah, it was an event. And now, that's kind of in certain ways gone past, except for like when you really love an artist, if you're like, crazy about Lucinda and you gotta, you go get her new record or whatever, and people do that, but it's just changed. And so I don't know who's reading anymore either. I know I don't have very many friends who even read. I mean, I read a lot of books, but
Same here. Yeah.
yeah, do you? Yeah, because I don't really talk about it with that many of my. I go on the road and I go to people's houses and they don't have any books, and I mean, it's just the way it is. The world has changed. Like the computer has changed everything. So
And these phones and
continues.
such, it's just
What?
changed it. Phones have too. The smartphones have
The
made us
phone has
dumb.
too. It's like the big thing now. I was looking at the people coming out of the hockey the hockey playoff yesterday in Buffalo, and like there's a huge crowd, and they're coming out and they're all singing, but every single person is filming it.
Hmm.
It's just so
Hmm.
weird, that they're all singing when they've all got like the whole place is walking down the escalators and walking through the place with their phones on, like you know,
Yep.
I don't
What
know. I guess so they can relive it. I don't know. It's fun, I guess, but
it is.
well, you
Well,
know.
I'm sensitive to copyright things, and so when I go to a concert, because of what I do, people kind of expect me to post stuff, and some people have said they live vicariously through my life, and I get to go to a lot of shows because of what I do. But I also try to be respectful of the copyright and the fair use and all that kind of thing, which nobody can ever define what that really means to me anymore.
Right.
But what I try to do is be respectful. I film no more from a concert than say a minute, because I want people to get the feel of the show, because I want them when they see it, I want to say, oh, so and so's coming to my town,
Right.
and that sounded great. I want to go see it. That's what I'm hoping they get out of it. But you know, and so in effect, I'm kind of creating a short attention span with what I do in those situations. But it's because of legal necessity that more than anything else, I would love for them to see the whole show. But
Totally.
but even with what I do with this, Peter, there's I put the full interview out, but I've learned I've had to create little reels that I hope creates a desire to hear the whole interview.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But there
Yeah.
seems to be a lot more interest in the shorts than there are in the long versions of things. It
Right.
drives me nuts, but you got to do. To me, I'm trying to preserve musical history with what I do. I
Right.
certainly don't do it for the money, but because there's so little of it there.
Right.
But
Totally.
it's, to me, it's fun to talk to people like you, to get your perspective on things, of where you're at today versus where when you first started, and hopefully create interest or a
Right.
reminder to people that may have, oh yeah, the Plimsouls, or oh yeah, Peter Case, that kind of thing, and
Right.
get people off their butts to buy the record, go to the show, hopefully buy some merch if you got that, because that's how you guys make your living anymore. These 360 deals are killing artists, and I
Yeah.
wish they would go away, for
Yeah, I
your
don't know.
sakes. But so what's
Nobody asked me to do one of those.
what's on to wrap this up here? What's on your agenda with this album coming out? A lot of touring, a few shows.
I've been touring quite
What
a
else
bit.
is on your radar?
I've been on the road since October pretty much. And so October, November, I was playing in Europe, and then I came back home, and then went back out in January, February to Europe again, doing some different places over there. And then I came back here and toured about a month on the East Coast and up through the Midwest. And now, starting Monday, I'll be going up to the Northwest.
Ah,
At some point, I think in the fall again, I'll be going back out and starting Denver and working my way down to New Orleans. And then that might be it for the year. I That's a lot of touring in a year for me,
yeah, yeah.
so we'll see, and then there'll be more. I hopefully I just keep going.
Hmm. Hmm. Well,
I love
hopefully you
playing
make it
live.
out. I hope you make it out this way. Don't forget the open court in Knoxville. But if you're going to be like in Nashville, if I know far enough ahead of time, I could make it over there. It's not that far of a drive, and I love going to Nashville every chance I get.
I've only
And
played Knoxville like once. I play Nashville quite regularly. I play the Bluebird.
oh yeah,
I've played
yeah.
different places over there. Sometimes it's a routing issue. So last time we were going to play the Bluebird, but then we had to route it because of Mountain Stage Radio. So we went north instead. But yeah, I'll let you know, or Wendy will let you know,
Mm,
or something. We can
yeah.
get you over there to a show. I haven't played Nashville yet on this record, so we'll have to get down there.
Oh, that'd be cool. I've been to the
Uh,
Bluebird one time. Ray Van Hoy, I don't know if you're familiar with him,
Heard the
country
name, yeah.
writer. He wrote "Don't Have to Be Me Till Monday" and "Golden Ring" for Tammy Wynette and George Jones, and more of a old country style. But he works with everybody, and he does these songwriter circles. And boy, that was a lot of fun to do one of those there and just watch the guys talk and share their stories and bounce things off of each other. And yeah, I love it. If people can get in there, I highly recommend catching at least one show at the Bluebird.
Yeah, I did one of those songwriters on the round thing there with Robin Hitchcock and Kevin Kinney. So
Ah,
that was pretty fun. Yeah, we
very
did it.
interesting. Cool.
I
Well, what
played there a
I
lot.
promise you, I will look up and see where that Elvis Talks
Yeah,
album.
do
I
that.
know
Yeah,
I have
please
the
do.
vinyl.
Yeah,
I've
I
got
definitely
that,
want to hear that. I
and
gotta
I'll see
hear
if I
that.
can find the CD for it. And it may be under a completely different name. That's how I
Yeah, give me
remembered
the
it.
title of that because I really want to hear that. Is the whole record just him talking?
Yeah, you know how you would banter with people and say
Yeah.
goofy stuff and all that. The entire album. I've got only heard it on vinyl.
Was it on
Both
RCA?
sides of it. That's I'm sure it'd have to be. Yeah, yeah. It came out before he died, actually. So
Incredible.
I guess he had an album obligation, and he said, "Well, if you want one, here it is. I'll just
I wonder
stop."
if it's on Spotify
I don't know.
or
Let me
anything
look
like
real
that.
quick. What? I've got my phone. Oh, my phone dropped there.
Or maybe it's on YouTube or something.
It could be. It was nothing that was ever filmed, um, but you know what I think it was called, Peter, was uh, let's see, Elvis
So many
talking
Elvis records.
album. I, it's called "Having Fun with Elvis on Stage."
That
Came
sounds
out came out in 1980 or 74,
wow.
and that's all I'm seeing on here. And on the album cover, it shows like 6 different poses of him on stage, but all it is just a bunch of banter and his joking around and how he
Oh, I
would get
found it.
on stage.
Oh no, it's an episode from something. Uh,
Well, I think that might be that from the Epic movie. Oh. Well, man, this is a lot of fun. I know I
Good
did a lot
talking
of
to you,
talking,
man.
but I love what you have to say. And
All right, thank you. All right, well, great. Thanks for having me on here, and it was great talking to you. And you know, thanks for turning me on to that Elvis record. There's a podcast called Bizarre Albums, and they feature that album on a Bizarre album. So maybe I'll check it out over there. But I
yeah,
want to
I'll
hear.
look that up too. Yeah. So, well, listen, if there's anything else you got going on in the future, I'd sure love to help you, help support you on that by doing one of
Excellent,
these.
man.
And hopefully you'll be out in my neck of the woods. We can meet in
I hope
person.
so, man. That'd be great. I'd love to get up there. All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right, my friends, stay
All
safe
right,
and
take it
healthy.
easy, man.
Take care.
All right,
Bye bye.
take care. Bye.
This has been another fun-filled episode of Boomerocity with your host and producer, Randy Patterson. The theme song for Boomerocity is Roll the Dice and is recorded and used by permission from Quentin Hope. Quentin is spelled Quinten, and Hope is H-O-P as in Paul, E. And you can find out more about Quentin Hope and his music at quintenhope.com. Post-production is done by Cardinal Sins Productions. The Boomerocity name, logo, and content is copyright protected. Segments may only be used with written permission by Boomerocity and or its assignees. Inquiries should be directed to input@boomerocity.com. Copyright 2026.